Hi everybody, you've got Lauren Tida here, Senior Executive Editor for Phoenix Home and Garden Magazine. I'm here with Billy Schenck. Billy is a renowned artist. His work has been featured nationally and internationally. He's based in Santa Fe, but he is here for only 2 more weeks at Western Spirit, Scottsdale's Museum of the West. And the exhibit is called Western Pop. So Billy, can you tell us a little more about the exhibit and the connection to Andy Warhol?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll start with being connected to Andy. When I was 18 years old, I started art school in Columbus, Ohio, and I'd never been in a museum or a gallery situation before. So the very first show I saw as an 18-year-old kid in September 1965 was Andy Warhol's Campbell Soup Cans. Then my next connection with Andy was I was in New York during the spring break in 1966, and I was broke, and I ran into a friend I knew in a cafe, and he said, "I can get you some work with Andy Warhol." You got to be kidding me. So he took me over to the Lower East Side at the St. Mark's place where Andy had rented this Polish American embassy building for a 5 or 4 week run with the Velvet Underground, which was the first acid rock band in America. So I became a gopher for those guys, and I crashed with Lou Reed, Nico, and John Cale, all who became, famous underground superstars. And so that was my first introduction to Andy physically. Then later I moved to New York right out of art school, and I was represented by a gallery in downtown Soho, and Andy came to my second solo show there. And other than that, there were 3 art bars in New York. One of the most prestigious was Max's Kansas City at the lower end of Park Avenue. And when Andy was not having a social schedule with whomever, all the rich and famous people he was hanging out with, he always had the back room at Max's. But I was not a part of that posse. I wasn't close enough. But Andy was there. So I would be hanging out front with other famous artists other than Andy.
So what was Andy like?
Well, with people you didn't know, he was real quiet, real reserved, shy. Anybody that he really knew, he was much more talkative. So around me, he didn't say anything, but he was certainly, visiting with everybody. But he was nice enough to introduce me to a lot of the underground people who became really famous from that era. I mean, I didn't know who they were or what their significance was, or maybe they weren't even significant yet because it was only in 1966. But I mean, he was great that way. And then later, I came to find out that he was real supportive of other younger artists and collecting them. I was not aware of that. Later in his life, the last couple of years, he hooked up with Michelle Basquiat, and they did some collaborative work together. I think 85, 86, and 87.
So Western iconography, pop art, 2 very different art genres. What inspired you to combine those 2 together?
I was going to say they're different until you meet Billy Schenck, and then they become one and the same. Well, Andy definitely had an impact, an influence on my work. And I began using black and white movie stills from the old Westerns. And I would project those with an opaque projector, and then later it became a slide projector. So I inadvertently was kind of doing a photorealist approach to this old, movie still stuff. But I didn't actually do it in the same detailed way that a photorealist would. I broke it down and, minimized a lot of the detail, and I did it in a paint by number style. So I married paint by number to photorealism, and not knowingly I had invented Western pop, as it came to be called. So I was also among, there were 5 of us who were the original group of contemporary Western artists, and the other being Luis Jimenez from Hondo Valley, New Mexico. I saw his work in New York, and Bob Wade from Texas was another artist. And then here was Fritz Scholder and T.C. Cannon, and we were the originators for Western contemporary art in general. I became probably the most pop of that group.
So your older work focused more on the kind of Old West.
Yeah,
and
well,
then
on the movie stills.
Yeah, and then it, starting, I believe, in the 80s, you started to delve more into the concept of what the New West is. So what is that? What is your imagining of what that is?
Yeah, well, it was when I moved here. I remember specifically, this was in the fall of 1975. I remember the slogan, Scottsdale, the westmost western town. And I was on Main Street, at the galleries, and I'm thinking, oh, this is crazy. I didn't know anybody equated West with a bunch of palm trees up and down the streets. So then I met this other guy who I became friends with, and he was in love with Cadillac convertibles. So that started my series around 1978 of doing Cadillac cowboys, convertibles, stuff like that. And then I did a series, I think it started in 1980, that were takeoffs on Kellogg's cornflakes. So I used the same logo, Kellogg's and all that. Start each day with 8 essential drugs up in the corner, but I changed the figures from wholesome athletes to degenerate, drug-addled cowboys or cowgirls, and I changed the cornflakes to Kellogg's Suicide Flakes, Kellogg's California Flakes, just any kind of flakes. Mm-hmm. So that was a really fun series, and it took off. I couldn't believe I could sell these things. They were nuts. They were off the wall. So that was truly the first real pop contemporary stuff. And I would say before that, we thought of cowboys, in the contemporary genre as driving pickup trucks. But I moved mine into Cadillacs, and then I was being represented by Elaine Horwich Gallery, and she had a 1952 Rolls Royce. So I thought, okay, I'm going to make my cowboys and my cowgirls drive around in Rolls Royces. So that's how I moved from pickup trucks to Cadillacs to Rolls in those paintings.
So can you give us some insight into your creative process? Like where does it start for you?
Right. Well, these days I still shoot slides. 35 millimeter film is what I've always done. I use pretty much a slide projector. And now I have literally tens of thousands of images. I still do photo shoots with, like maybe a native model or with, some of the cowboys or cowgirls that I ride with, rodeo with. They're usually people I know. And we might do 2, 3, or 4 photo shoots in a year. And for the backgrounds, for the landscapes behind my paintings, I pretty much go to Monument Valley. And I've been going out there for 53 years and still finding new ways to shoot the same mesas or whatever. And so what I do is like a collage. So it could be a photograph of something that's a foreground, and then I'll move into the figures, which are large scale and iconic, and then back to a midground in the background, and then I just sometimes invent the skies to go with it. So it's like paste and cut, except I do it all by drawing it on canvas from different sources of slides. Also, a higher percentage of my work now is based on pulp Western magazines or Western comic books. In the perspective, especially in the early ones, 1917 to about 1940, 45, the illustration was much better quality than what it would become later in the 50s and 60s. So I just reconfigure those original pulp Western paintings into my paint by number version, and add and subtract different stuff to make those work.
So are there any pieces, or is there a piece that holds particular significance to you?
Yeah, there's one. It was a cavalry painting I did. It was 1973. It still holds the record for. I spent over 12 weeks painting that painting, and it was a black and white movie still with Errol Flynn. The title of the movie was "They Died with Their Boots On," so it was a cavalry scene of Custer's Last Stand, and it was a big painting. It was 6 by 9 feet or something like that. And it got sold right away, and it was a record-breaking price for me at the time, $2,200. And then it went to auction in 1980. It broke my record at auction that time at $5,000, and it's been there wherever that is ever since. And that's the one painting I would buy back if it came to auction. And it will sometime, hopefully in my lifetime, and that I can hopefully afford it.
All right, well, that is Billy Schenck. Again, it is Western Pop. It is at Western Spirit, Scottsdale's Museum of the West, and you only have 2 more weeks to see it. It ends on November 26th, so don't forget to get it on your schedules before Thanksgiving.